If you feel like you're constantly being dragged back into the drama when you're trying to reason with your ex, this boundary technique will change everything. Most people feel like they have to set the record straight to stop the abuse, but that's the trap that's keeping you stuck. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you the exact boundary that I use to stop the provocative text from coming from my ex-husband. You're going to learn how to stop being the source of fuel for your abuser so that they're going to get bored and finally leave you alone.
We all know that feeling, don't we? The moment that we realize that we're getting pulled back into the drama that we fought so hard to escape. In this video, I'm going to talk about the common trap that most of us get caught up in when we're trying to deal with an emotionally abusive person. And then I'm going to give you a couple of really powerful tools that will help you shut down the drama. Hi, I'm Kristen. Years ago, I left a toxic marriage, and it took me getting out of that marriage to realize that I was repeating the cycles of emotional neglect and abuse from my childhood in that marriage. And after all that trauma, I ended up with anxiety, depression, PTSD, an anxious attachment style, and codependency. And I've now largely healed from all of that, and I'm combining my personal experience with over 30 years of experience as a registered nurse to share all of the things that I've learned with you so that you can also lead a healthy and more joyful life. Whenever my ex-husband would text me and, verbally abuse me or whatever through the phone, my immediate response was always to fire back, to justify, to argue, to basically set the story straight. Years later, I realized that this was actually a really deeply conditioned part of me that came from my childhood. I'd experienced a lot of belittling and gaslighting during my childhood, and so I had very strong muscles in this kind of justifying and justice department. And I had to learn to kind of quell that and get out of the habit of doing that. That response and that act of justifying, it never really helped. It only added fuel to the fire. It kind of makes me laugh to even think about it because can you even imagine if you had, justified your position to the person that's abusing you and then they say, oh, you're right, I was wrong. You were right all along. Like, that just never happens. Before I dive into giving you information about how to set boundaries, I do want to just show you this information on the screen about the domestic safety hotline and text line. So you can call this number. You can also text them any time of day. And I really highly recommend this. I actually contacted a domestic abuse hotline when I was about ready to leave my husband, and it helped me make really good decisions. And so I just wanted to say that and trust your instincts to be careful and not do anything that you think might put you in an unsafe position. And if you do feel like you're in an unsafe position, please reach out and call these folks and have them help give you some guidance on what to do next. If any of this information that I'm giving you today is resonating with you, please click the thumbs up button. That really helps to ensure that more people get to see this. And then if you know someone that's going through a situation like this, it would be amazing for you to share this video with them so they can get the information too. Thanks. This desire that we have, this desire to fight back and to justify our decisions and our behavior is called the JADE trap. And so I'm going to walk you through, this is an acronym, and I'll walk you through what all of these things are. So the J is for justify, as I've been saying, and that's the kind of this need, this desire to justify and explain all of the decisions that you're making, to justify your parenting decisions, your basic rights, and all of those kinds of things. My ex-husband was always criticizing my parenting decisions, and so in this situation, I would always want to justify my decisions and explain why I made them. Next is A for argue, and that's our desire to kind of fight back with the truth and getting caught up in facts and details and things like that. And I always remember feeling just like this kind of momentary satisfaction in doing this, and I felt like, oh good, I'm fighting back, I'm fighting for myself. But that satisfaction is so momentary and so short-lived. I'll say honestly, it's not worth it. The D is for defend. My ex-husband used to do a lot of what's called kind of crazy making and make me feel as if I was emotionally unstable, or that, my thought patterns weren't clear, gaslighting and things like that. And so I would work hard to defend myself and work hard to basically make it clear that I wasn't emotionally unstable or whatever it was that he was throwing at me. And again, it doesn't help. And the last letter, E, is for explain. So this is the idea that if you could just explain to them your position, that maybe they'll finally understand and they'll finally get it. Do you see a pattern? We're talking about judging, arguing, defending, explaining. It's as if we're in a courtroom and your abusive person is the judge, the jury, and the executioner. The goal of the abusive person isn't a fair trial. It's to get a reaction out of you. The only way to win this game is to not play. So how do we refuse to play? The first method that I'm going to teach you today is called the gray rock method. And the idea is that you basically make yourself very uninteresting, very unappealing, and non-reactive. You want to basically be seen as a gray rock, as something that's very uninteresting, that they're not going to really get a rise out of, get a reaction out of. The key is to make your responses as uninteresting as possible. You want them to be short, you want them to be factual, and you want those answers to really have no emotion baked in. And sometimes a gray rock reaction is no reaction at all. So really think about the times where the abuser is really just trying to get a reaction. They don't need any information from you. They're just trying to get a reaction. And so those types of texts, they don't need or deserve a response. So let's use a classic example. I'll give you kind of an example of a text that I would get from my husband. So it'd be something like, "You're always late dropping off the kids. You're so selfish and you never think about my schedule. I bet you were out with your friends instead of being a responsible parent." So if you're responding with the JADE trap, you might say something like, "I was only 2 minutes late. I actually had to stop for gas, or the traffic was really terrible." And you might say something like, "I am a responsible parent." So a gray rock response really ignores all of that bait and just gives the factual information. So a good response to a text like this might be something like, "I can confirm the drop-off time was 2:07 and see you next week." Just something really simple. This is a response that's factual. It's not emotional. It's actually kind of boring. And so there isn't any fuel for them to come back at you with. The gray rock method works because it cuts off the supply to the manipulation. So you're not only fueling the fight with them, but you're also not giving them anything that they can turn around and use back on you. So the abusive person ends up having to drum up more drama to keep things going, to keep that fire kind of fueled. And so it ends up being as if they're basically in a fight with themselves, and that's not very fun. And so they give up. The beautiful thing about this method is by refusing to play, you're conserving all of this energy that you can use for yourself or maybe for your family or for your kids. If you're here, I'm assuming it's because you've been through some similar things and probably have some healing to do. So I wanted to let you know that I've created a mental health resource guide that contains information about all of the things that I've done over the past several years to heal myself from my past abusive relationships and trauma. And I want to share those things with you so that you can also heal too. There's a link down in the description below. If you click it, I will send it to you for free. So the gray rock method really helps us kind of project outward a response. That boring gray rock, that thing that, the person that's abusing you just is not going to be interested in, not going to care about. But how do we protect ourselves at the same time while all of this stuff is being lambasted on us? And I wanted to share with you a method, kind of a mindfulness method that I developed that really worked well for me. And it's called being a duck. So let me explain how I would do this. I would visualize myself as a duck. And I would think of myself as a beautiful mallard duck floating around in the water in a pond. And ducks are, first of all, these just beautiful creatures, but they have these kind of oily feathers. And so when water splashes on them or it rains, the water just kind of rolls off of them. And so what I would imagine is When I was in a situation where I was getting lambasted or criticized by my ex-husband, I would imagine myself as this duck floating peacefully in this pond, letting all of his words and the things that he was saying about me roll off my back. And they would roll off my back, and then I would still be kind of in this peaceful, gentle place. I also know from my own experience and just really thinking a lot about this is that my safe place is often by water. I love being by water, and I find it very, very relaxing. So this was a visualization that worked really well for me. And I am offering it to you to borrow it. But if you have an idea of a visualization, and especially in a place that felt really safe to you, that might also create the same sort of impact, I highly recommend that you do that. So the gray rocking and the duck visualization work really well together, because the gray rocking, it starves the abuser from having anything to fuel their ongoing fight. And then the duck visualization helps to protect you from within. So you're kind of, just naturally repelling all of this information that's being thrown at you and letting it roll off. So it doesn't penetrate, it doesn't get in, it doesn't negatively impact your psyche. If you have experiences like this dealing with an abusive ex-partner, especially like in dealing with, mean text messages and things like that on the phone, leave a comment down below and let us know what kind of things you've tried, and let us know if you have any ideas for things that we can all try and share. In the next video in this series, I'm going to talk about how I had to finally separate from my husband as far as him participating in the parenting of my kids, and I had to completely accept that he wasn't going to be able to participate. And I had to learn to not have any expectations for that. And the way that I did that was through radical acceptance. And so I'm going to walk you through that process in the next video. If you haven't seen the first episode in this series, where I talk about how I kind of started to recognize and realize that it was time to break free from the emotional roller coaster, I'm linking it up above here, and you should go check that out. Thanks so much.